Welcome to Digital 360 Summit 2020. We are the premier event for senior executives driving industry digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. 2020 edition is a free virtual event via Zoom. The dates are August 18th, 19th, and 20th, 2020, and August 25th, 26th, 27th, 2020. We want to thank our sponsors, Texas State University, Greater San Marcos Partnership, and Cedar. This year's edition has 70 speakers from amazing companies like NASA, Intel, SAP, CPS Energy, Brazos River Authority, Katerra, Direct Energy, City of Austin, Aclara, Dell, Engie, Exelon, Oracle, Tesla, General Motors, TXDOT, Vistra, Siemens, AT&T, National Grid, Itron, City of Los Angeles, Austin Energy, City of Colorado Springs, and Hunt Energy Network, and over 1,000 attendees. The program has 16 keynotes and 11 panels, followed by 11 white papers and 28 videos. The event covers multiple industry verticals like networks, energy and utilities, buildings and infrastructure, water and wastewater, public safety and new financial tools, smart cities, sensor and edge computing, big data and software, smart mobility, new regulations and business models, space and smart factory, and Industry 4.0. We are also introducing Texas State Cedar, a new industry research consortium focused on connected infrastructure research enabling big ideas and the topics covered in each of the panels. We at Texas State, Star Park, Cedar, the Greater San Marcos Partnership, and industry partners are focusing on building 9 living labs to transform applied research and economic development with the goal to delivering one digital world.
Wow, I get so excited every time I hear that. Welcome everybody. And we are broadcasting live, and we have several folks coming on, and usually it takes a few minutes for them to log on. But I'm excited that you're all here. Thank you very much. And as you saw from the intro video, we are very excited about a collaboration and work that we're doing at Texas State organization called Cedar. So what I want to do is I want to show you that video real quick before we jump into the program and introduce our keynote speaker, Cris Eugster. So let me share this real quick, and hopefully you guys can see this. And I'm going to put this on a bigger screen, and hopefully, can you all see that? It's okay to give me feedback. You see it? So excited to be here with you guys, and let me introduce you to Cris Eugster, an old friend, Chief Operating Officer at CPS Energy, and a superstar of the industry. Cris has been doing all kinds of work from IOU to municipal power, and he has been also very involved in several years helping steer the comeback of Puerto Rico. And obviously what's going on in CPS is nothing short of fantastic. So we're lucky to have him. So Cris, I'm gonna welcome you to the stage, and go ahead and take over the mic, and we're gonna run your slides for you and let us know how you wanna advance them, okay?
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Andreas, for putting this on. I think it's a big, I want to recognize your leadership and your organization in terms of being able to kind of lean into these times, have these conversations, bringing kind of, experts together to talk about important issues. So I want to thank you and appreciate you having us on with Digital 360. I'm going to talk about our transformation and innovation journey at CPS Energy. We are among the largest public power companies in the country. We're a big player in Texas and again, nationally. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey here. We've done a lot over the past 10 years. We shut down 2 coal plants in 2018. We were an early player in solar with our epic 400 megawatt solar RFP in 2012. We had a comprehensive energy efficiency demand response program with our STEP program launched in 2009. So we've done a lot. We have a lot of momentum, and we are looking to kind of continue that momentum. And what we have put forth for our community is what we call the flexible path strategy. And that's basically not looking at the way things have been done in the past, not taking a traditional approach to generating and delivering power, but really looking for different ways, new technologies to, again, deliver power to our customers and our community. And this is very focused on technology. We want to pilot new technologies. We want to, partner with players out there, leading players out there. We are partnered with the Epicenter here in San Antonio, where we're bringing in entrepreneurship and technology incubation into our thinking. So it really is a much different approach than what we have done in the past in terms of resource planning and strategic planning. It's really a technology focused path that we're looking at in terms of generating, delivering power. If we go to the next page, just a real quick who we are. We're one of the oldest utilities here in Texas. We date back to the late 1800s. I think the Alamo was one of our first customers. I think we provide sort of gas lantern fuel supply there. We were acquired by the city of San Antonio in 1942 for $34 million. And I think that's been a great investment. We have paid back billions, I think over $7 billion back to San Antonio and our community. And I think we support over $340 million a year back to the city of San Antonio. So essentially we are a business owned by a community for 78 years. We have an independent board of trustees, but we are owned by the city of San Antonio. So we are efficient like a business, but we're also very closely aligned and committed to our community. Go to the next page. A little bit about our numbers. We're the largest municipally owned electric and gas utility in the country. We're one of the largest solar power players in Texas. We just were recognized by the Shine City Award for being number 5 in the nation by Environmental Texas in terms of the amount of solar that's been deployed in our service territory. And we're the second largest wind power production in Texas. We serve about 2 million customers, 860,000 electric accounts, 358,000 gas accounts. These numbers are a little bit dated, close to $2.8 billion in revenue and over $11 billion in assets. And we employ 3,000 employees. Next page. As I said, we've been a leader in solar. We have over 500 megawatts of utility scale solar. These are 2 of the solar projects that we have out there. One that I don't have here in picture is one that we did with our wastewater treatment plant in partnership with SAWS. We call that the Sinkin plant after Bill Sinkin, one of the early solar leaders here in San Antonio. And that was a good partnership between water and energy. And again, we put 20 megawatts of solar at the wastewater treatment plant here in San Antonio. Again, an example of that partnership philosophy that we have. If you go to the next page. Again, a big, large wind player as well. This was one of our wind farms in Corpus Christi, the Papalote Creek Wind Farm. One question for Gulf Coast Wind, which has a nice afternoon profile, is can it survive a hurricane? And in 2017, Hurricane Harvey, pretty much bullseyed Corpus Christi, and the wind farm survived. So at least in round 1, the wind farm wins. So we're very bullish on renewables, wind and solar, but it was good to see that wind was resilient even in the case of strong storms and hurricanes coming onshore. Next page. One of the things that we're very proud of is our diversification of renewables. We have, like I said, Gulf Coast wind, which has an afternoon profile. We have West Texas wind, which is more of an overnight profile. We have solar production across the state, as well as our service territory, which is always producing when it's hot and 100+ degrees and there's not a cloud in the sky and load is at its highest. Solar is consistently there. So if you bring all these profiles together, we get a very consistent production of energy, and our renewables are tightly integrated into our resource plan and how we serve our community. So it's part of our day ahead and real-time energy management services. So we consistently count on this renewable production in serving our customers. If you go to the next page. Our rooftop solar program has also been exemplary. We have over 180 megawatts of rooftop, over 21,000 customers that participate in this program that have rooftop solar systems in San Antonio. We have 75 registered installers and over 1,000 folks that are employed with those installers. And you can see the map on the right show all of the rooftop solar systems across our service territory. And we really do try to get deployment across all of our different districts so that everyone can participate in these programs. Next page. Our STEP program, which is our energy efficiency and conservation program, launched in 2009 with a goal of 771 megawatts. And that goal was comparable to the size of a power plant. So by achieving this, we did not have to build a power plant. And we actually achieved 845 megawatts, and we came in $126 million under budget, and we did that 1 year early. So we were very excited about that, and now we're looking at FLEXSTEP, which is the second chapter of that, and we're trying to engage with our community around what are the additional things that we can incorporate into our energy efficiency and demand response programs, things like electric vehicles, things like, of course, solar. Are there carbon reduction, programs or initiatives? So we're comprehensively rethinking our STEP program to be much bigger than what it has been in the past. Go to the next page. So I'm going to transition now to what we call the flexible path, and specifically the FLEXPOWER bundle, which we announced last month and we're very excited about. The flexible path strategy, as I said in my intro, is taking us beyond kind of traditional ways of thinking. So the past 10 years ago, 15 years ago, all the focus was around, what's that next power plant look like? All the capital was there, a lot of the time, the resources, and we've seen that shift. It's now moved more to the grid because a lot of the generation is now happening at the grid. So the focus really is coming to be more of a dynamic grid. And Andreas, you've been a leader in this, how to think about smart grid, an intelligent grid, a dynamic grid that can provide two-way connectivity, enable applications like EVs and solar and all sorts of things like that. So we are in the process of really integrating all those components, whether it be renewables, smart grid, energy efficiency, energy storage, and really figuring out how to kind of work it with our traditional assets as well. So that's where we are today. Where we're moving into is where the FLEXPOWER bundle is that future is today for us, is how do we create a generation capability that's primarily solar. We're talking about 900 megawatts of solar that really can replicate or replace a traditional power plant. So we need to understand, how do we firm up that capacity? How do we make sure that that clean energy is there for our customers when they need it? And so that's the process that we're going through, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. If you go to the next page. Before I get into that, I want to show a little bit of a snapshot of our product roadmap. Our board of trustees approved last month the green tariff, which allows customers to access the wholesale market and go 100% renewables, and at the same time manage the complexity of having a renewable portfolio in terms of being able to have power when they need it. So that is a very exciting achievement for the community here, and really allows, you know, our customers a pathway to 100% renewables. We're looking at other solar programs later on in the quarter this year where we, you know, where we can expand on-site rooftop solar programs, and how do we think about those concepts, which will be a nice complement to the green tariff. We already have a net metering for residential customers, but we want to expand that to, you know, to larger systems, to small, medium businesses, and things like that. We have a resiliency program that has on-site backup generation, so that if a customer goes out because a car hits a pole, they can have generation on-site, kind of a microgrid concept. Now, 99.99% of the time that is not needed, so that power is available for the community or back to Texas. So kind of thinking about that concept, I think, is very exciting. We have a lot of customer interest in that, as well as it helps us with that flexible peaking capacity that we need as we see the ERCOT market dynamic changing. Reliability, we're getting a lot of traction, a lot of interest in putting big energy storage systems within our distribution systems that ultimately will have access to the wholesale market, so that they can charge when there's excess power at the wholesale, like in the middle of the night when there's a lot of wind, and then discharge that power when the load is high, maybe in the afternoon time period. To do that, we need a wholesale distribution service. We have one right now, but we're updating that because we have some very exciting big energy storage projects that are coming online in our service territory here in the near future. Line extension is another thing we're going to be looking at down the road. And then we have a pilot program around EVs as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Go to the next page. Our EV program strategy is really around bringing awareness within San Antonio about EVs. We're seeing EVs almost reach a tipping point. You know, you can see, you know, Tesla, they've come out with the Model S, the Model X, the 3, the Y, the Cybertruck. Pretty soon, an EV is going to be much like a smartphone. It's just everyone's going to have one. Everyone has to have one. And we see that day coming here sooner than later. And so we want to be prepared for it from an infrastructure standpoint, as well as a partner and a service to our customers on that. So we've got a very exciting program around our EV strategy. We've got about 150 charging stations across our service territory, and we're trying to work to expand the capabilities that we have to serve our customers, whether they're doing public charging or they're charging at their home or their business. You go to the next page. So now transitioning to the FLEXPOWER bundle, and that again started with our CEO Paula Gold-Williams launching the Flexible Path in 2017. Again, we retired the 2 daily coal units in 2018. We announced the FLEXPOWER bundle concept in 2019, got public input. And what we're finding here is, you know, there are a lot of technologies. So we don't want to just do another solar project. We want to have a solar project that has the ability to ultimately replace a plant. And so that firming capacity is going to be really important. And so we are open to a lot of different technologies and how to firm up that power. And we're especially interested in, you know, in battery storage. And we have 50 megawatts in the RFI that's out there on battery storage. But maybe there's more there. And we're also interested in long duration battery storage. Lithium ion gives you about 4 hours of battery storage. Then you have a dead battery depending on the size and capacity. But you know, we're seeing some pretty interesting concepts on longer duration storage. So what we did is we put an RFI out there last month, request for information, to basically look at all the technologies before we shape the RFP and bring that out later this year. Go to the next page. We want to do this in a thoughtful way. We want to do this so that, you know, this power is reliable, it's affordable, it's secure, it's safe, it's environmentally responsible, and it's resilient. So we bring all these strategic pillars together as we think through our path moving forward. Next page. So what the FLEXPOWER bundle envisions is 900 megawatts of solar, up to 900 megawatts of solar, 50 megawatts of storage, and then an all-source approach to the firming capacity. So when the solar's not shining, or that we have the ability, whether it's battery storage or some other technology, to basically firm that up. And this is a meaningful step towards the climate action and adaptation plan that the city of San Antonio passed in last year. It was supported by our board of trustees on August 29th. They passed a resolution in support of the CAP. So we are all aligned on where we want to go. Now we need to bring the right technologies together so that we can serve our community. Go to the next page. So really what we want to accomplish with this RFI, and it's open right now, so if folks are interested, please respond to it. I think it closes up the end of this month. But what we're trying to do is raise the global visibility of what we're trying to do here in San Antonio. We're trying to find innovative solutions. What's the best out there and what can we bring here to our community? We want to discover global and local players. We want to reveal kind of what are the market conditions, that are out there, understanding COVID-19 impacts or any impacts they might have on supply chains or things like that. So we really want to discover what is the best out there that we can bring to our community. Next page. And so if anyone is interested in, please, there's a lot of information we have on the website. It's cpsenergy.com/FlexRFI. And I think it also is cpsenergy.com/RFI. So either of those two links you can go to, you can find a ton of information about it. And we welcome participation and partnership. And, please, if you got an idea, please submit it.
So I know, Chris, that you have to go, but we have a panel ready to roll. And I wonder if Darren or Greg or Cengizhan or Semih or Phil, and I don't know if we're going to see Phil, but we see his name. But so any questions for Chris, perhaps anything that intrigued you about all the things that CPS is working on? We got a couple of minutes before he has to jump out. You guys are muted, so if you want to unmute and ask a question, anybody?
I have a short question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, Chris. This is Semih, and I'm an associate professor at Texas State University and do some research in renewable energy as well as machine learning, optimization, and so on. I was wondering that if you guys are using any machine learning into prediction modeling and so on.
We do have an advanced analytics group that we stood up about a year ago, and they have AI algorithms to help us kind of predict where we're going to have issues within our grid based on weather forecasts, whether based on where we've been vulnerable in the past, in terms of the infrastructure itself. So I would say we are just starting to crawl in terms of machine learning AI, but we are very interested in it. Again, we're looking at it more from a forecasting standpoint, trying to predict what the future might look like. But there's also been a lot of discussion about bringing that capability into our customer engagement call center so that we can better help our customers as well. So, if you have any ideas on that front, we are very interested.
I'll communicate with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody else? Questions for Chris? Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Chris, I had a question. So I think at Austin Energy, we're generally pursuing have been pursuing more of a approach of solar and wind PPAs with battery storage also in the mix. But what do you see as the primary advantages to approaching both of those together as a bundle?
I think you're right, Greg. I don't think there's any one magic bullet in terms of, replacing a traditional plant. You do need an integrated approach. All these different resources have different profiles. Energy storage has a component that can help fill in the gap. So I think an integrated approach is the right one. Whether you do it as a PPA or as an owned asset, I think it really is up to kind of what are the different incentives that are out there. We are starting to own more of these assets. We have a community solar project that we've owned. We have a 5 megawatt solar, 10 megawatt battery project that we own. So we're trying to get a little bit more into that space because we realize our power generation organization is going to have the skill set and understand that space. So the big PPAs are still, just from a price and incentive standpoint, those are hard to replicate through an ownership model. but they're getting there. I mean, the tax credits are phasing out, and at some point, our low cost of capital, our AA credit rating, I think will serve us well to get into to own more assets than we have in the past.
Thanks.
Chris, this is Darren, your neighbor to the east at GVEC. Good seeing you. Here just recently, we know y'all announced working closer with your industrial commercial loads and giving them access to the wholesale power markets. It's one of the areas that we too have seen some of our customers interested in, primarily because of renewable resources. And just curious to know how that's going for you. I know it's probably an early project, but are you seeing interest from your large loads there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of interest, to go down this path. They do have the sophistication to manage their energy in terms of the price volatility. I mean, you see ERCOT prices in the couple $1,000s a megawatt hour. And so really, you do need to have some sophistication to be successful in that ERCOT market. But we believe our green tariff enables them to do that in a partnership with us, cover our costs in our partnership, and also give them that access to the wholesale market that they're looking for. So it took us a couple years, Darren, to get this, to get it all worked out. But there's definitely a lot of demand, and getting the economics right, I think, is important for both sides. And I think we got there. So if you have any questions, or if you want to talk to some of our folks that have been very involved with that, we're happy to talk.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we've been seeing the same thing. We actually have a couple of customers now that are basically have access to the market. But it's just interesting to me here in more recent times where they're more interested in renewable and having portions of their renewable loads, or their loads served through renewables, and want to be more direct for, directly to them as opposed to being part of the portfolio.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions? Anybody else? All right, Chris, thank you very much, sir. It's 2:30, and I know you gotta go. They want to keep you, and so much appreciated. We'll send you a link to this recording so you can see how well you did. We enjoy your we enjoy your presentation. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Chris.
Cristiano Monsalves, thank you for moderating today. You got quite a set of folks here to have a discussion. I'm going to step in the back, and the plate is yours. Cristiano worked at Eversource, so he's dangerously a former IOU guy.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I don't want to get into the discussion of each one of the panelists' opinion before making a quick opportunity for each one of you guys. You want to mention what you guys do and what your company lies in the spectrum of what all the call to action that Chris mentioned. Darren, do you want to start?
Sure. So I'm the general manager and CEO of GVEC. We are an electric cooperative that's just directly next door to San Antonio on the eastern side. Cover about 3,500 square miles. So a lot of suburban areas next to San Antonio, but also very rural, the more further east that you go. Obviously much smaller than a CPS, where we serve about 85,000 electric meters. Very active, a little bit different from a cooperative perspective that we are from a traditional standpoint. We are active in the power supply markets. We don't have and don't belong to a generation and transmission cooperative, so we manage our own power supply, which gives us a lot of flexibility in our ability to manage our load going forward. We interact with numerous suppliers in the market, and as well as moving forward, bringing more and more non-traditional sources, more distributed energy resources that our customers are wanting as well, and bringing that into the power supply mix. And I think that's what we'll be talking about today.
It sounds like you have the same resource adequacy challenges that Chris has, just a different scale.
Exactly.
I want to thank you so much. I want to move to Greg with Austin Energy, but before I get to you, Greg, because I'm gonna put you on the spot with the same question to draw some parallels into what Chris was talking to you about. answer to your question and talking to us about. I want to give the other opportunity for the other introductions, and then I'm going to come back to you for a question / introduction, if that's okay with you, Greg. Semih, tell us what you do.
Hi, my name is again Semih Aslan. I am an associate professor at Texas State University Ingram School of Engineering, and I'm also director of Smart Lab. During the one of the presentation that addressed that you saw one of my lab. Actually, I have right now 2 labs. They are both Smart Lab in the university. So mostly we do renewable energy research. Also, we are upgrading the lab with FPGA boards. I just got the new FPGA boards from Intel, and as well as that we are doing a lot of research in machine learning, how we can apply generally in right now, most research that we do is for smart city, but how we can apply into the smart energy as well as the smart grid systems. And also do a lot of sensor development, and we do a lot of optimization in our laboratories.
Hence your machine learning question. And when I come back to that, that's fantastic.
Okay.
Cengiz or Genghis Khan?
Cengiz.
Genghis Khan, your turn.
Thank you. My name is Cengizhan Yenerim. I'm responsible for portfolio management and data and analytics at Engie North America. So thank you for having me. To describe roughly what we do here in the United States, and maybe going back to Chris's slides, I think his slide on the flexible path strategy kind of summarizes what we do or what we are trying to do. Of course, we don't have time for me to go back to our history, going back to the Suez Canal, but maybe that slide kind of summarizes our story in the past a couple of years, where we divested almost all of our thermal power generation assets, our stake in liquefied natural gas, and sort of redeployed that capital into wind and solar energy. I think we have about 1,500 megawatts in production and another 13,000 megawatts in various stages of development and under construction, primarily wind and solar. I think I may be wrong, but we're probably the largest distributed storage player in the US. We serve roughly half of the Fortune 500 companies from an electricity supply perspective. And we've completed a lot of energy service projects, whether it's electrical work, HVAC work, or energy efficiency projects, doing on-site renewable solar installations and whatnot. So I think that's a good summary of what we do.
That's fantastic. That will tie into an integral approach of every solution that every utility and customers is looking for. Right? I'm going to come back to you before I'm going to introduce to Phil. Phil, please go ahead.
Hey, Cristiano, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Sorry for the video earlier. My name is Phil Nevels, Director of Innovation and Partnerships at Exelon Utilities, which is a electric and gas utility holding company. We're also the largest owner of nuclear plants in the U.S. And in my role, we do a couple things. One, we help develop the long-term 10-year Exelon Utilities strategy. And as part of that, I'm looking at new technologies that play some role in that and making an assessment of how each of our utilities can implement those technologies. And so that leads to the second part of my role, which is actually working with each of our 6 utilities to design the pilots to test these new technologies. And so we've got 6 utilities, about 10 million customers, our largest being ComEd in Chicago, which has about 4 million customers.
Yeah.
That's an electric only utility. Our other utilities are gas and electric. And so what's interesting for us, just even recently, is on the electric side, we have a big push and focus on decarbonization. And so as part of that, it's about the role the utility plays in bringing more DER into our respective systems, helping customers make that choice to getting, whether it's solar, storage, or whatever it is, but also on electrification. That's obviously a really big focus for us right now, both on the vehicle side, but as well as other aspects of homes and businesses. And so that's what we're doing on the electric side. But on the gas side, obviously that runs counter to decarbonization. So we're trying to figure out how those two things mesh together right now, which is just very interesting. And so I can stop there and obviously answer any questions about Exelon, but that's who I am.
Thank you so
that's what we
much.
do.
Thank you so much. So before we open the panel, like I think the analogy that Andres gave is perfect. It's like a poker game. We're friends here, where everybody's watching and asking questions from the side. We'll get into. We have some questions from the attendees, but before to get there, I want to get to Greg. I happen to live in Austin as well. I used to work for the utility for many years, and now I work at CMG with Andres. I'm lucky to be there. It's a tremendous team to work for. Greg, thank you so much again for joining us from Austin Energy. There's a couple of parallels that I want to start, and when I give you the microphone, then everyone can jump in for your comments. Feel free, open your mics and whatnot. The music starts in a few seconds. So, Greg, when you see the challenges that Chris posed and the call to action to say, hey, we've been doing great. This is great, PV, wind, but now what? Now we're going to request experts to come in and tell us how to play chess for the next 10 to 25 years. I might have seen a number out there in the utility dive that by 2025 we will have 400 gigawatts of power. Energy storage, solar, wind. We're not even half there. So when you hear Chris's approach to the strategy and how to move the pieces, how do you draw those challenges, so those parallels in your challenges as an Austin Energy, as an Austin Energy guy?
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to this session. I think there are a lot of parallels between what Chris was describing and what we currently have at Austin Energy. Actually, an astounding number. We're, of course, his immediate neighbor to the north, serving the Austin area, generally Austin city limits, with a little bit of service territory outside, about a little over 500,000 meters, been serving the Austin area for about 125 years. Integrated utility with generation, T&D, and retail customers. Heavy focus on renewables, EVs as a municipal utility. We take our marching orders from City Council. And City Council at Austin has mandated some pretty aggressive goals for renewables and decarbonization. We're currently already over 50%. Carbon-free energy serving load, and our intent is to get to 65%. So very aggressive goals, but obviously called for in this time. In my role as Chief Technology Officer at Austin Energy, I oversee the corporate strategic plan, which is kind of an unusual role for a CTO, in addition to more typical roles like enterprise architecture and data analytics, research and development, those kinds of things. But in terms of like I said, in terms of the parallels, very strong into electrification, a lot of rebate programs for schools, for businesses, for residents, in terms of both EVs as well as charging stations. A lot of rebate activity there, again, driven by, kind of mandates from City Council in terms of, kind of just decarbonizing, electrifying the Austin area. So in terms of the specific approach to, kind of how to get there, that's why we asked the question about the bundles and what San Antonio sees as essentially the benefit to trying to go for bundles of storage and solar wind PPAs, as opposed to pursuing perhaps best of breed, let's say, of either one. The other thing is, with continuing decline in cost, of solar. You know, if you buy and own something today, you're not availing yourself necessarily of ever declining, you know, costs going into the future. So that's also, you know, something that Austin Energy has been trying to better understand the pros and cons of greater ownership. Today we own some, but the overwhelming majority of our renewable portfolio comes from PPAs. So
interesting.
Yeah.
PPAs, yeah. Well, I see a lot of parallels. There's something that I want to bring to everybody's attention based on what Greg was saying. What do you guys think when you hear Chris talking about the future? He mentioned 2 or 3 things that stuck with me really clearly. One of it is the need to develop partnerships, and I see this when Cengiz talked about a little bit what they do when Phil mentioned what he does. Those strategic partnerships seem to be laying the ground for anyone who wants to allocate resources and look to the future. If you talk to the folks of Guadalupe Valley, I think it's the company right now, and Darren, you can correct me, that you guys have the most watts per customer in Texas, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, from a solar perspective,
Solar,
on a per capita basis. So, you know, it's all relative, right? So, you know, GVEC compared to Austin certainly don't have as many. We only have 14 megawatts of solar, but on a per capita basis, we have the most watts of solar installed. But yeah, you're talking about these partnerships, and that's where we're really driven. It's more customer related, and trying to have those partnerships with our customers. And so there are customers who have that desire for solar at their homes, at their business, and we're wanting to make sure that we have the right policies in place and the right structure in place that incentivizes them to do that. And we've been working very hard to promote that. And in fact, we have our own company that does its own sales and service and installs of solar systems themselves. And it's a subsidiary of GVEC where we're actively working with those customers, both from a solar perspective and battery storage. And so that's kind of the partnerships that we're looking to. It's more of being partners with our customers to build those opportunities for more flexible load, whether it be at the residential level or at the commercial level, much like Chris was speaking of, and giving our wholesale, our large customers more access to renewables products through us, but closer to the market, directly to the market.
Yeah,
it looks like, go for it.
I was going to say our neighbor to the north, Georgetown, has gone, I believe, 100% solar in terms of how they're acquiring energy to serve their load. So it may actually be some of the mid-size cities that end up, you know, kind of helping lead the charge with the increased penetration of renewables and use of renewables to serve kind of utility scale load and that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool industry. It's been a cool industry for 30 years that I've been in it, and I still think it's a pretty cool industry.
When you think about the industry, how important, how relevant ERCOT has become in the new era? This is a very unprecedented challenged area for everyone. And there's one of our attendees that has a question related to how easy it is to work with ERCOT. In the big scheme of things, what has been your experience thus far? And this is a question for all of you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I've experienced working with ERCOT from a competitive retail electric provider perspective, as well as, you know, my current position with Austin Energy. I think that ERCOT, you know, relative to many other markets if we're comparing to other markets, for example, in the country, has a much more mature and well laid out, I think, overall structure than what you might see, for example, in PJM or in New York ISO, New England ISO.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about
I
Cal
remember.
ISO, because I haven't worked there,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
from my perspective, it's a very mature market and straightforward and clear kind of path to operate in ERCOT. That's been my perspective.
Thank you. Maybe I would concur with what Greg is saying. I think it's compared to the others. That doesn't mean ERCOT doesn't have its difficulties. Of course it does, but compared to the others, I think it's certainly a much more easier market to operate in. Mainly also because even if you go to New York ISO or Cal ISO, they're still part of larger interconnects, whereas ERCOT is a standalone, which basically makes it, avoids being a FERC jurisdiction. So what it allows is it becomes quite faster compared to the other markets to make changes. You can just go to the Public Utility Commission of Texas, and then things move quite rapidly and fast, and that allows innovation and other things, which is not something you can find in most other markets.
Absolutely, I fully agree. I want to tether into what Phil does, because there's the other aspect, and I know maybe if you guys want to interrupt me, but I want to shift into the other aspect. What Chris mentioned is technology. So he's pursuing the future. He knows that there's something out there. He sends an RFI to better understand one of the partnerships. The other is technology. As a partnership, as a technology-driven partnership and strategies, Phil, what do you think the biggest barriers are to develop programs like as aggressively as Chris wants to?
Yeah, so what's interesting about my role is that, and I've recognized this over time, is that when you talk about strategy, it's really regulatory strategy. It's about policy. And the challenges that we have in our jurisdictions, because many of the technologies are there and exist to do many of the things that we're saying we want to do and that we think can benefit our customers and benefit the utility. But the challenge is, are there policies in place that incent the utility to do that? And in particular, where I think the policy is challenging is, and this is maybe to Darren's earlier point, is when you start to consider the fact that our utilities, we serve 10 million customers. That's all customers. That's every customer in the region, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of ability to pay. You've got the spectrum of every single customer. And so how do you deploy technologies in such a way that everyone gets equitable access to the benefits of those technologies, and you don't have any sort of adverse cross-subsidization that's going on, where you've got certain populations paying for benefits that they're not receiving. And so that's all to say is that when we're trying to do pilots and we're trying to deploy new technologies, the challenge is demonstrating that the benefit of that technology can be universally applied to all the customers in your territory. There's some customers that have no interest, there's some that do. And for us, the challenge is always about optimizing benefit for entire jurisdictions, right? And customers have to believe that you're doing that too. So that's the challenge isn't the technologies. We've got lots of things we want to do and lots of cool technologies that are available to do them, but it's telling that benefit, storing and deploying them in such a way that you actually realize that benefit for all customers. That's the challenge for Exelon.
That's a very valid point. Technology not only can be a solution, but it has to be a solution for all of it. I completely agree. Now, let me veer to technologies a little bit, and I know that we have had a conversation prior to today. Semih, when you talk about technology and machine learning and creating this future professional line of partnerships that will start how you train those professionals to be out there, and secondarily, what technologies and how the technology will influence those markets. What would be your opinion on the recommendation and the observation that Phil makes, where it's like not only technology, but look at also at how the this technology needs to be optimized to solve many problems, not just one?
Now, when I actually opened my lab in 2014, I had to deal with, actually they sponsor and then also gave me money, SECO, State Energy Conservation Office, and as well as the Department of Energy. And I had to deal with that side of it. But also part of the thing that I had to do, because when you think about the energy, and again, I'm coming from Turkey, and I used to work in a company in Turkey in 1994 when I was working for a company, was only one big government organized distribution and also production of energy was controlled in one. And it was really close. So we didn't have any way to actually see what's going on and so on. Now it's a little bit different. But when I start working on my lab, and I realized that this is not just one big problem for one person or one group to solve. For example, academy as us has some responsibility, state or federal level some responsibility, and you guys mostly companies like Austin Energy and so on has responsibility, and as well as that customers have responsibility. So I did a lot of training outreach programs to actually try to teach students what's the solar energy and so on from high school to middle school level, and try to show them the responsibility of energy and how to actually use energy and where it's coming from and so on. Now, when we look at right now, we can train it that way to, consumer level, as well as we can actually train our system. So machine learning comes into that, in my opinion. How we can actually produce better, how we can actually see where the problems are using machine learning, as well as we can predict, outages. Maybe if you have a better machine learning system in 2003 outage in Ohio, maybe we could actually predict that was going to happen. And maybe we can actually have a better machine learning type of algorithm to see where we need to actually focus more. For example, if there is a theft is going on somewhere. I mean, I know that we don't talk about that one, but I know that is around $96 billion of losses happen because of these energy thefts. And we can even actually determine where those are coming from by implementing some of those algorithms. I believe that applying some machine learning and into this will be actually much better for all of us, including federal level all the way down to the 10-year-old kid using the electricity. And I know that this will actually create some new implementation, and that's what we're coming into. We have really high power computing systems, and we have also access to Texas Advanced Computing Center. Right now they have a $60 million supercomputer, one of the fastest accessible computer system. And also we have on our systems as well. And again, as I said, that I'm developing hardware accelerators using FPGAs to, kind of decrease the number in machine learning computation. So again, I believe that this will be the future. In many ways, we actually not just determine or kind of predict outages or predict the consumer users, as well as optimize our systems as well.
I fully agree. I think you mentioned a couple of things that they're interesting, and it touches each one of us in the panel. That it's a consumer level, it's a system level. It's how do you solve the problem and the tools you use. It seemed to all those paradoxically, it seemed like all those can be materialized on all the issues that Tesla solved. On the realization of a dream, which is like and actually a beautiful, affordable EV that is present in every street right now. And I live in Austin, and as Greg knows, Austin has a great programs for EV. I own one. It's not a Tesla, but I wanted to touch on the same points that Chris made when he said that finally there was a tipping point on the EV and the EV charging infrastructure. In your opinion, and not as only as a faculty, but as a technology, as a solutions, as a problem solver. How do you see where we are and where we're going now with the EV and EV charging infrastructure?
Actually, I had a conversation with my wife today about the EV because she's planning to buy one of those cars, but her biggest problem is where she heard 20 hours of charging time. And her idea is like, if I go somewhere, I'm gonna wait 20 hours for that to charge. And obviously still is the biggest problem. Again, you can go to level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on where you are.
Correct.
You can actually charge 30 minutes or 1 hour charging time, depending on the battery system that you have. And that's great. But then also another question comes up, is cost is actually increasing because it is bringing, if I charge with the level 3 systems, then it's bringing a lot of, now when we look at the utility level, we always have focus on houses or factories to actually, now we are also bringing up the cars into this equation. I guarantee that the price is going to increase in terms of, and maybe the balance wise, it may not be there in terms of like mile per kilowatt or something like that when we look at it. But I believe that we are going to go, I took a class from one of the best hybrid vehicle instructors, Ali Ahmadi, a long time ago. He was my one advisor in Chicago. At the time, our estimation was 2050, almost 80% of cars will turn into either hybrid or EV. And
wow.
That's what we are going to go. I mean, again, maybe that might not be, true, but, fossil-based gasoline and cars need to actually decrease, or we have to change how we actually use the cars. But I think that we are actually we're going to see increase in EVs more and more because technology is going that direction. And Tesla, I believe that some other cars will get into this. And now there are a lot of conversation about the planes turning into full electric. Some tests will be done in that area as well. So I think we are going to see increase in this area. So maybe not 2050, but
I think it's
50 years. Yeah.
One thing that I keep thinking about to myself, Semih mentioned the potential cost will increase in terms of the electricity infrastructure, which is a fair point. But I think there's one aspect that we're missing. Electric vehicles as opposed to fossil fuel fired vehicles. Electric vehicles have an ability to.
Did we lose you, Cengiz? Okay, well, it looks like.
Sorry.
Got you back?
Yeah, I think I don't know what happened there. So what I was saying is, electric vehicles as opposed to ICE vehicles, they have an ability to network with each other. So you can certainly network electrons, and with network connections, the bigger your network becomes, the higher the efficiency. The efficiency grows at an exponential rate. So if we can find a way, and the math, I'm sure, is not that difficult to do. It's really how people engage with electric vehicles and energy. That's what has to change. If we can figure that out, there's going to be far more power on the roads that is going to be available that we need at any point in time in our homes and factories. So if we can somehow figure out a way to make this network work, and with self-driving automobiles, with 5G connectivity, I think at some point we'll have that capability. And if that happens, I don't know what the result will be, but I don't think the price will increase that much. In fact, you might be offered by Tesla a lower price to get the better vehicle because it has more storage capacity in it.
I agree on that. This is a very nice sideways. So you said economy of scale, and I wanna tap Darren and Greg. I know Darren has done, at scale a lot on the EV and EV charging infrastructure, and I don't know the results that you have had, as well as I know that there is a program with Austin Energy and Pecan Street, I think, that is a V2G, vehicle to grid, and I want to know how to reconcile those two forces What has been your experience? This is a question for Darren or Greg or both of you guys.
Yeah, I'll defer to Darren if he has specifics on V2G. I don't have specifics on V2G for Austin Energy, unfortunately.
No worries.
About 1,000 AE branded charging stations out there, and that there are about 12,000 EVs in the Austin area. So, and it continues to grow crazy, nearly 50% growth per year is what we seem to be experiencing. So the statements like a decade or two out, having 80% of the new cars, for example, being EVs or hybrids does not seem that far-fetched at all. But with that, I'll defer to Darren on V2G.
Yeah, I don't really have any experience or advice in regard to vehicle to grid, just because we're not involved with it and haven't seen it. I think that's going to be, at this point, from our perspective, left to the experts to continue to develop that. We're involved in electric vehicles and charging in a relatively small way, trying to learn the technologies. We have a couple of fast chargers, level 3 chargers that we've installed along Interstate 10. Certainly have other chargers that we've installed in different locations, level 2 chargers in different locations. One, to learn the interaction that we have from the utility perspective with the EVs. I guess the other thing that we would say, remembering that we're more rural, right? So we have the suburban areas, but the further rural you go, the further distances you're having to travel into town. And so it brings different challenges. I think as folks become more familiar with the technology, as they get more comfortable with the technology itself, they will learn that the range on these vehicles is very equivalent today in today's world as a gas-fired vehicle. In fact, I've had experience with it where I live, 30, 45 miles from my office, and I've been using on a short-term basis, using one of our electric vehicles just to kind of get a sense of how it interacts, how much charging time that we need, and I got very comfortable with it. And again, I'm traveling long distances because of just the mileage back and forth to my office. And I think the more that we see that, the more people have experience with it, the more we will see further and further adoption of that technology in electric vehicles. And we're trying to encourage that through, charging stations in more remote areas that you would not normally see them. That helps folks get over that range anxiety.
What are the other factors? This is a question for all of you guys. There's many factors to, like Darren said, there's this fear of EV. Is it going to leave me behind? Am I going to have to take a bus? What are the other factors that you see that we could diffuse and amplify to all consumers in the next 5 years to continue to make this transition into the EV world?
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd say is, I think price is still an issue. Total cost of ownership, I think we've crossed over there, and I think total cost of ownership is lower for EVs, but the price is still high for a lot of folks, and this gets back to my earlier point. It's not too high for a certain segment of the population, but as you go further in, it gets. One of the things that we're trying to do as a utility, because what's really in vogue now for the utility is treating rebates as regulatory assets, right? So to the extent we can offer a rebate for something, whatever it is, if we're able to then earn on that rebate like we would earn on any investment in capital. We've been doing that a lot on the energy efficiency side for energy efficiency upgrades and things like that. But we're wanting to do that on the EV side. But the challenge on the EV side is that EVs just cost a lot more, meaning the rebate required to put a dent in anyone's consideration of whether they're going to get an EV or not has to be much, much bigger. So then how do you rationalize a much, much bigger rebate? And the way we're trying to think about that is by tying electric vehicles explicitly to the carbon savings that they create. And if we can then put a value on the carbon savings that those vehicles are providing, we can then value a rebate based on that value. So then you end up getting $5,000, $10,000 rebates. If we're then able to treat them as regulatory assets, that's even better if we're able to earn on that. So that's something we're tinkering with right now. There's no open dockets or anything like that. But it all comes down to what can the role be in making technologies like EVs, making those affordable for the average customer.
So affordability being one, rebate can be the other. Go ahead.
I was going to say, equity is a very strong, it's one of the key strategic directions actually for Austin is trying to encourage equity in every way possible. Excellent point raised by Phil about, when we say they're affordable relative to maybe what they were 5-10 years ago. They're really still upfront, affordable to a large segment of the population. So one of the alternatives along those lines around electrification has been a program in Austin around electric bikes to make electrified transportation basically more available to a broader cross section, especially in a urban area. Oftentimes, a bike is just an easier way to get around than a car might be anyway. So that's one of the efforts we've been trying to do around addressing equity and electrification with transportation.
Maybe also hypothetically speaking, I mean, we can also probably explore, instead of an ownership-based model, you can also explore a service-based model. You can sell mobility as a service, that might be more affordable. Again, depending on the programs you're running, that might be more affordable for people. And also, I think it allows the capital that you're deploying to be more usable, because when you buy a car, you're not really making full use of all of the dollars that you're putting in the car, to be honest. But if a car is shared by a community and you basically collect a service-based revenue, you're making more out of the dollars that you're putting in the car itself. That could be another avenue to explore.
Yeah. The other thing we're trying to do, we have a program called EV360, off-peak subscription charging rate for people with chargers in their homes, kind of segment out that cost, from your overall perhaps tiered rate cost that you've got or tiered rates that you've got for your home energy bill. So as an additional way, it runs, kind of in the evening, evening and morning, basically, to lower the cost of ongoing energy. It ends up being, very, very affordable from a cost standpoint. So I don't know if that's also kind of another measure being adopted by folks to make things more affordable. Doesn't get around the upfront cost, which is absolutely still a barrier, but the ongoing run rate, it can help with that.
And I guess I'll tell the obvious on my side, education. And I think we also, educate the people why EVs are important or will be benefit using EVs rather than just, electric cars and, charge. And those are the other issues that we can actually kind of train people. And also another one is in my side, when I look at an EV car, obviously for Cybertruck and so on now, for example, the moment that they kind of introduced, they sold out in a way because people are looking at different look. And also people are looking at different type of needs as well. I know that there are some SUVs that you can get EV as well as cars and trucks and introduction to some other EV areas. The way that they look different, I think people will actually purchase them more. So, and I mean, we are talking about, for example, price, but when you buy a car right now, they are almost the same as buying an EV car in many ways. I think the prices are kind of leveled in the last 3-4 years in a way that we can actually afford an EV car easily for many people. So, but I mean, I think the biggest concern in my side is, education. And, right now we are even discussing about the simple as putting a mask on when it comes to COVID. And I know that one discussion that we talk about COVID, and it all comes into the education of how we approach the problem. So.
Actually, long education. Austin Energy is doing. We got 1 million programs, but we do not only rebate programs for schools, but we actually provide curriculum material, like STEM curriculum materials, for the schools to use in their science programs, to use the chargers as lab materials, basically, as well. So again, trying to teach folks about electrification of vehicles and whatnot. But we add that extra little bit in addition to the normal rebates and whatnot. We add that extra curriculum information as well for schools. One more program.
I agree with you. Austin is really lucky, and as well as San Antonio as well. But I did a research in rural areas, and when I say rural areas, I went to Lockhart and as well as Gonzales, Texas, which is not that far when you look at it, like 30 minutes, but it's totally different in terms of understanding of what STEM education as well as that renewable energy will be when you compare the school in Austin. My son goes to school in Austin here, and their curriculum is a little different than when you look at some of Gonzales or Lockhart. So.
I think, Cristiano, just going back to just the future of electric vehicles and battery storage, it kind of goes to what Chechen was saying earlier about it's from our utility perspective. It is the broader perspective. Okay, so we have whatever it is, a few thousands of electric vehicles out there on the grid today. 20 years from now, what's it going to be? And what is the impact going to be to the grid itself? How are we going to be able to handle all of this charging? Are we really going to have vehicle to grid technology that is capable of sharing that battery storage along the way? Because if you think about the masses that they are speaking of and that we're all talking about being added to the grid, and the impact that will have. And then it goes to the time of use rates and charging and trying to convince people to charge at the right times of the day. That's going to have a huge impact, potentially have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And bringing all these technologies in to manage that is going to be key to being able to make it advantageous from a utility perspective, but also from the consumer's perspective. And I think a lot of those questions are still yet to be answered as we evolve into this new technology.
Yeah, I agree. So there is the information that I was sharing before. It was from a Utility Dive magazine, and they were putting in perspective from the total DER, from the total distributed energy resources of a 1 pie, how big is the EV and EV infrastructure right now, and how bigger would it be as we come to 2025, 2030, and to which point will be not only influencing the economics and financials of it, but also the resiliency of our grid. To what end do you believe that EVs and all the other distributed energy resources will help us make our grid more resilient? When do you think when do you think it's going to be? When do you think that the balance will offset the amount of the EVs that we will have in the market will be enough to not only solve the problem of mobility, but also help with the resiliency of any grid?
Are you asking me that, Cristiano?
Yeah. So there. Well, I'm asking everybody
Yeah,
because
because I'm not sure I have the answer. I'm not sure I can answer that, but you know, again, I think it's going to be where our service area is a little different. Our electric that I operate is a little different than say a San Antonio or an Austin. Although we're seeing it bleed into our systems, but the impact, you know, at what point will it have grown to a point where it's having a significant impact on our grid and the resiliency? Yeah, I don't really have that answer other than just looking at the same information that a lot of you do as far as the growth rates and in electric vehicles. But I'm sure there's other folks on the panel who have a lot better insight than I do into that.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any insight. I'm just doing some kind of cocktail napkin math. You know,
Yes.
if you look at, you know, like a Tesla Model S, it's got, I think, you know, the nicer models have 100 kilowatt hour battery in them. So, you know, 0.1 megawatts times 10,000 vehicles, about 1,000 megawatts, assuming they're all fully filled, all fully charged, right? Which they, you know, probably wouldn't be. And, you know, relative to, so say they're half filled, now you're down to 500 megawatts, 500 megawatt hours that you would be using entirely for stabilization. You know, it probably doesn't, from a resiliency standpoint, unless you're talking about fairly short-term events, which you might be able to handle via something else.
That's right.
I don't know if, you know, and I'm speaking way beyond my ken here, but it strikes me you'd have to have a lot of cars, very high penetration of cars, in order to have anything that would be like grid significant. Now, having said that, that same battery for like home usage for a period of time, you know, that might have some possibilities, but I'm not sure that we have I'm not sure the technology is in place right now, especially if you have separate circuits, for example, you know, going to your EV charger versus the rest of your household circuits, your household service, you know, if that's really all there. But if it were, then at least at the micro level, you might have something.
Yeah.
Have a little mobile power wall, right?
Yes, I like that idea. Yes. Just to, in honor of the time now, I want to veer the conversation to one of the most important questions I think there is in the new distributed generation, which is the use of the virtual power plant programs. What is in your opinion, or anyone's opinion? Okay, this is an open question for everybody. What are the necessary steps that we need to get through to implement successful virtual power plant programs for our current grid and for the future grid? So let me start by saying there are two tendencies right now in the market that we can all agree to, and which is the electrification of the grid. The demand is growing, the grid is not growing, but we need to diversify our resources. So virtual power plants help us not only solve the problem of how to allocate those different distributed energy resources into the grid, but make the grid smarter. I wonder if, in your experience, what are the programs, what are the requisites that we need to fill to get to the next step, to advance towards a more smarter grid, and it's starting with small initiatives.
Yeah.
So we've been involved in this for a long time, and as well as many utilities. I mean, it's like demand management. So it's, you know, whether it's thermostat programs, whether it's coordination with your large commercial loads, whether it's bringing in battery storage as we move forward. That's a lot of the things that we're looking at now, and you know, call it virtual power plant or call it demand side management, but it's the ability to be able to have access to those loads and control those loads when prices are high or when demand is high. And so we have a number of things that we do here today from the standpoint of voltage reduction. We can do voltage reductions. We have backup generation that we can call on. We have thermostat programs that we're continuing to grow, just like Austin and San Antonio are very active in, and being able to call on those thermostats from a load reduction, virtual power plant reduction. It's really the combination of all of those technologies coming together and being able to dispatch them or to control them at a given point. I really think the technology is there today. We're the one that may not be there is the battery side of it. The more distributed batteries that we get out there, and our ability to control those would have a big impact on it. But the relationships that we have with our large industrial customers who have the ability to curtail load at certain times, whether it's a price incentive or demand incentive, there's lots of opportunities that we're working on today to bring all of that together in what we call a virtual power plant.
Right.
But I think the technology is pretty much there other than potentially batteries.
Yeah, I'll just throw out there, I agree with everything that Darren just said. I'll just throw out there, back on the policy side, the recent upholding of the FERC 841 order, which I think is an example of this, is a stepping stone for this. And, the FERC 841 was basically saying that behind the meter storage can participate in wholesale markets. And that's important because that changes the economics of some of these resources. You get greater deployment of these resources. And then from a utility perspective, what's interesting to us is we talk about VPPs or whatever you want to call it, is we see there being an opportunity now as you get sort of proliferation of all these behind the meter assets, you see an opportunity because someone needs to step in and coordinate these things. There's a coordination that needs to happen. So there's a VPP who's coordinating all the exchanging of value that's happening across all these different assets. If you had a distribution marketer between distribution and wholesale, and we think potentially there's a role for the utility in that. So when I think about new products and services, I'm not thinking about it in terms of new business models. I'm thinking within the current traditional utility business model, are there opportunities for the utility to expand the scope of things that it's doing? I think when you look at VPPs and the coordination that comes along with that, there's potentially a role for the utility there.
I think we've been talking about VPPs, but we have been talking about and actually doing a fairly significant project for a while now called Austin Shines, where we look at energy storage, which was the primary driver of it, both at the residential, at the commercial utility scale, both unaggregated and aggregated, as well as management of PV, again, both aggregated, unaggregated at residential, commercial, and utility scales, partnering with a firm to develop the software to take into account not only kind of grid stability, but also the pricing factors coming off the market simultaneously. We're recently in the process of upgrading our distribution management system for the Austin area, and part of that, and part of that is an enhancement of the DERMS, the DER management software capabilities of the platform. In addition to introducing better load shedding support, for example, to handle some of these more extreme events. There was a question that came in about resiliency and kind of what are we doing along the lines of resiliency. A large piece of that is trying to deploy technologies, trying to deploy line sensors, more modern equipment, moving away from electromechanical devices into intelligent electric devices to do grid control. These kinds of measures we actually have in our one of our strategic goals is grid resilience. where we say we operate a secure and resilient grid by using innovative technologies that deliver superior reliability. So that's, you know, kind of one of the 6 strategic goals in the overall strategic plan that we've got to move in that direction. So it's a fairly complicated, as everyone knows, fairly complicated thing to be driving. It's the complete opposite of, you know, kind of the central power plant and one-way energy and all the stuff that, you know, we were all very familiar with 30 years ago. And developing, I think the solution to most of these challenges will just end up being technologies that can harness the capabilities of the technologies that we are already deploying or that others are deploying out there. You know, you kind of can't stop it. So the question is, how do you manage it, and how do you leverage it to improve things like grid resilience? That's what we're working on.
It's a little bit of a, it feels like, at least for me, like a deja vu, because we talked about similar things last year in the summit. I was on a different panel back then. It was the new business models and new regulations panel. You know, VPP, and we said, you know, VPPs, demand response, all cool things, still things that we knew existed years ago as well. But what's really challenging is how do you really sell this to the consumer? Because when we're talking to the average person and you talk about demand response and VPP, they don't have a clue what you're talking about. And we as an industry are very bad when it comes to pushing people our language. So I think there is a benefit in the service-based model, because it allows people to engage what you're trying to sell in a way that they can relate. And what I mean by that is, instead of selling the kilowatt hours, which is the one thing that we've been trying to do, when you start selling service, and let's just go with a very simple example. Let's say you're buying a refrigerator. You're buying a refrigerator because you want to preserve your food. And maybe there's a secondary point is you want it to look a little bit nice. So aesthetics is maybe your second concern. What if, let's say, Engie was to partner with Samsung? So when you go to Samsung to buy a refrigerator, what if you were to subscribe to a service which Samsung will bring in a refrigerator to you, and it's going to renew it every 3 years. So it's always new, it's always looking cool, and it's up to date. And basically the power that your refrigerator is going to use is being provided by Engie. And what we will do with the refrigerator, the power that it uses, is we will use it as a thermal battery. I mean, we all have thermal batteries in our houses. The refrigerator is a battery. So what if we were to cool it to -20 at night? Okay, if you want to eat an ice cream at night, it's going to be pretty difficult to scoop some ice cream out of the box, but you know, you can turn the refrigerator off during the maybe ramp up in the morning hours, and then there's some additional benefit. It's okay, you aggregate that with your smart thermostat, with whatever else you have in your home, and there you go. Your home is now a virtual power plant. But we didn't sell a virtual power plant. We just sold food preservation as a service. We sold temperature management as a service. But the thing is, how can you make this obviously work in tandem? And it goes back to what Greg was saying. It's very sophisticated, something that we have to resolve as energy companies. But certainly we should try to avoid giving that language to the consumers, because we lose them in our first sentence usually.
I know someone said in the comments that the fundamental of demand side economics is to give the consumer or the prosumer the option. Do you want to participate? And energy as a service is a good example. I know that some of you guys have spoken about energy as a service experience in the last 2 years and how that the whole paradigm has changed. How do you see the energy as a service integrated into this new virtual power plants, demand side management strategy for the future of the utilities?
I think energy as a service is, you basically have to have a dialogue with your consumer, with your customer, and you try to understand what is the job to be done.
Yep.
And that answer is going to change for everybody. It will change for every institution you're talking to.
Yeah.
I gave the example last year, at least from our perspective, with Ohio State University. Major customer of ours, and our approach there was not to sell kilowatt hours. You know, they had an academic institution has a goal of doing academics, doing research, providing affordable education to people. That's what they should be concerned about. They should not be concerned about the kilowatt hours that they're using, whether they're using more or less, or the financial aspects of it. So our proposal to them was, okay, we'll buy your infrastructure basically, and then we'll make sure power is always on. We'll make sure your carbon emissions are going to go down to whatever target that you're setting. We'll make sure of everything. You just pay us a fixed price, and we'll take care of everything for you. That includes maybe building a combined heat and power plant. That includes building a lot of on-site and off-site solar and wind resources, and putting battery storage. That includes monitoring not now obviously with COVID, but monitoring students, what classrooms they're going to. So are there any empty classrooms are there that can be, you know, can turn the lights off? That to me is energy as a service. And I think that's what we have to go as an industry. We will have to question obviously the traditional utility business model, because those kind of service-based models, you cannot really implement your, deploy CapEx and get the rent type of financial model. That doesn't work. So
especially in these times,
yeah. So that is the big question that I don't have an answer for, but I think that's the direction we should be going.
Thank you so much. Well, I know that there's many questions to be answered, and we've recorded the whole session. Unfortunately, the time's up. We've passed actually for 4 minutes. I don't know if Andres wants to come back and give a final statement, if you choose to. If not, I really want to thank you, each one of you. Thank you so much for your insights, your knowledge, and the appreciation of this common industry that we all love, and that we look forward to, impart in society what we believe the strongest energy savings measures are, and strategies too. Thank you so much. I don't know if Andres is here, but if not, I really appreciate your coming in, joining us. We will share this. We'll follow up with each one of you guys. Thank you, Darren, Greg, Cengiz. I appreciate it, Phil. I really enjoyed talking to you guys today.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you very
us.
much.
Fantastic job. Thank you.
There
everybody.
you go.